Hey everybody, hope and pray that you're doing well. Today as we come to our word from the word. And today that word is telling. Telling. I guess we all have those things that maybe, in our facial expressions and our gestures and things that are kind of telling of maybe what we're thinking. I know we laugh sometimes here lately and say, well, hey, the mask helps cover that up. We get back to a time where we don't have those masks on. Some of us are going to have to work on our facial expressions again because people are going to be able to see them. But with all that, it's thinking about spending time with God and how that is telling to others. In other words, other people can tell if we've been in the presence of God, or at least they should be able to, don't you think? So with that thought, let's look today in Exodus chapter 34. Moses still here has been in the presence of God. God has sent him down from Mount Sinai with the tablets in hand, the new tablets, and now we're going to see exactly what the people think about Moses. So, Exodus chapter 34, starting in verse 29, says, Now it was so when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and the two tablets of the testimony were in Moses' hand when he came down from the mountain, that Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone while he talked with him. So when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come near him. Then Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned to him, and Moses talked with them. Afterward, all the children of Israel came near, and he gave them as commandments all that the Lord had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. And when Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. Now, it's funny that even as the verses go on after that, that he would go back in the presence of God and he would take the veil off, and then he would come back to the people and he'd put the veil on. And it's this idea that, man, he was so close in his relationship with God that his face was literally shining from being in the presence of God. It was as if the holy light of God had shined so brightly on him that his skin was glowing to the point that the people were afraid to talk to him. Now, you say, okay, well, look, if it's going to be telling if we've been in the presence of God, we don't want to scare people away. But see, here's the thing. When we have been in the presence of God, it will be apparent. And yes, will that be scary to some? Absolutely. Because you know what happens in the presence of God? Sin gets called out. Sin is, there's a conviction that goes on. See, when you know this to be true, when you see somebody that is handling a situation in that godly way, and you think, man, I don't know if I would have done that. Or you start thinking about a situation you maybe recently went through and said, that is not the way I handled it at all. See, there's conviction that goes on, and that's why I'd be afraid to talk to them about how they did that, because then I would feel that much worse about myself. That's typically the way that we go, and I believe that's kind of a lot of what's going on with the children here, the children of Israel. But with this whole thought, I just kept thinking about, man, the telling features of being in the presence of God, of spending time in prayer. And I know even as we're doing these videos, right now, I mean, there's 5 to 10 people that watch these videos, and I appreciate every last one of you that are faithful to join in this study. But I wonder if we're really getting into the presence of God, if we're really seriously spending time with God in prayer, do people see what we see? Do they see the effect that God has on our lives? It may not be some visible light like this, but at the same time, shouldn't our faces shine with the joy of being in the presence of God? So many people, especially in churches across this nation and across the world, it gets to the point where we're just kind of there, and I mean, we show up with a saddened expression or a grumpy face, and we leave just the same. And if we claim to have been in the presence of God, what in the world is the world thinking that we're doing? I mean, they look and they see our facial expressions. Do you really think they're going to desire what we have? When we leave church and only talk about the bad things, or did you hear what such and such said, or did you see what such and such was wearing, or I can't believe the preacher said this, or he didn't say this, didn't call, all this stuff that would go on. And when the outside world hears that, it's no wonder why they want no part of Jesus, and why they don't want Jesus to have any part of them. See, there's features in Christianity, there's features in our prayer, there's features in our relationship with Christ that should be telling to all those around us. So much more than that's just telling them that we're Christians. But it's actually living it out. Living out the presence of God each and every day. But I also want to leave you with this thought. The longer he would spend away from God's presence, the more that the shine would begin to go away. The glow would start to fade. And it's just as true for you and I. When we come into the presence of God, we can get all excited and excited and just celebrating the fact that God has given us a word, or given us spoken something to us in our time of need. And we're, on cloud nine, and we're just so excited, and we're shining. But the further we get away from him, the longer that time span is that we spend away from his presence, and away from talking to him, and away from his word, and away from listening to his Holy Spirit, the more it begins to fade. And that will be just as telling as the shining is. So I pray, it is my prayer and our challenge, I believe that God is giving us all today, is, are you going to be willing to shine for Jesus? Are there going to be features in your life today that will be telling the world that Jesus is alive, and he's alive in you? God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.